Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff. My name's Jason and I'm in disbelief that we're actually in December already. Where's that year gone? So this is the November roundup. Hello and welcome to the November roundup. If you've not watched a roundup video before, then what we do in this short video is talk about what went on in November, what's coming up in December. So it's a great little way of making sure you've not missed anything and see if there's something you're interested in coming up. So in tools and tips in November, we looked at leftovers, scissors, mats and a rivet punch. So my tool videos are ever popular and we get some nice comments about some of those videos. And this month someone said you've even managed to make cutting mats interesting. Well, I hope so. What we try and do with those videos is aim them at people coming to the hobby and cut through the fog of the massive plethora of tools that you can buy for the hobby and cut it down to what do you actually essentially need, what's a nice to have, what do you use it for, so you can take a view if you're new to the hobby or coming back to the hobby as to whether it's something that's of value or not. Or if you're like me, you just keep buying tools because it's some strange addiction. Anyway, we had 4 tools videos and they all went down quite well, but the cutting mat one I think was a really important one for the youngsters and those people returning to the hobby, because it is a relatively new development that everyone uses. So also in November, our first impressions videos. In terms of things that float, we looked at that huge 1:35 scale Schnell boot, and we also looked at the 1:600 scale Mauritania. Both of them lovely kits. I was quite convinced looking at the Schnell boot that it must be an older kit than the 2008 claim, but apparently not. So basically they did a shoddy job of the rivets. So yeah, they definitely need reworking. However, what a lovely kit with loads and loads of potential. When you've got a ship kit at that scale, you can do lots of weathering, chipping, wear, add details such as buckets and ropes and tarpaulins and maybe the ship's cat and so on and so forth. You can really go to town on it, and at some point we're going to get stuck into that, and I'm really looking forward to see what we can do. But there is going to be some changes to the working area that need to be done first, and we'll be talking more about that in the new year. So the Mauritania kit, beautiful little kit. I only have one of them, but I've worked out to do what I want to do I need 4. Because I really want to have one in her Cunard livery. I really want to do the hospital ship version. And there's at least 2 camouflage patterns that would want to do. One with a lovely checker, which I'm sure I'd seen before and looked familiar, but I'd possibly forgotten about, and Stephen Payne actually flagged it up. And I took one look at it and thought, right, okay, that's kit number 4. So I've got another 3 to buy. I do bid on them when they come up from time to time, but only if they're not at a silly price. And whilst we're talking bidding, I am bidding on a Lusitania, so fingers crossed, because if we get a Lusitania at 1:350 scale, I'll be a very happy bunny. That's been on the top of my wish list for quite some time, but you try getting one under 200 notes in the UK. And then when it came to things that fly, we were looking at the 2109s. So we looked at the Tamiya one previously at the back end of October. In November we looked at the Edward one, and then we compared the 2. And you know, I just missed the fact that there was virtually no rivet detail on the Tamiya one. And there's a lot going for the Tamiya kit. You've got all sorts of innovations in it. You've got an engine in it. But in terms of punch for £1 and a return on your spend, the Edward one would be the way to go for me. Anyway, that was quite an interesting little comparison, and we are going to do that again at some point in the new year with a couple of Focke-Wulfs. And then, of course, we had that brand new release from Airfix, the Vampire. And what a cracking little kit that was. And it was interesting to see that the plastic had changed much harder. So clearly Airfix are making some changes. They're listening to the feedback they're getting and they're acting on it. So for me, Airfix are really punching above their traditional weight and catching up with the big boys very, very quickly. In fact, when you consider how much Airfix kits cost against, say, a Tamiya kit, it's a good return you're now getting. As long as you've got no issues with fit, yeah, I think there's some cracking kits coming out of Airfix at the moment, and that Vampire was definitely one of them. For my money, not quite as good or as innovative as the 172 Mosquito that we reviewed earlier. But at some point, probably in the new year now, I reckon we will be having this new tool, KT Ambulance. I have one on pre-order and I'm looking forward to that. I have a plan to do an ice cold in Alex diorama with it. Should be really good fun. And when we think about the builds, well, we finally finished that Mogami. In fact, it didn't take that long to build because we'd built it straight out of the box. And as I said at the end of that video, we will do a Japanese warship and absolutely go to town on it, weathering the works. So that's planned for at some point next year. But the Mogami, when finished, was actually quite an eye-catching ship with all those planes on it, 11 aircraft on it, and that odd flight deck on the back. So yeah, quite a nice little kit when done, and a popular build series. Tamiya is always popular. Japanese warships of World War II are always popular. Put the two together, and bam, you've got a winning formula for a build series. I think it went really well. People seem to enjoy it. So yeah, looking forward to doing more variety of ships as we go forward through into the new year. And as Mogami ends, we then started our new build series, which was the Christmas build, which is this here. So that's actually going to be 3 build videos in total. And at the end of the 3rd video, we will have completed this and also looked at some additional things you can do on this Spitfire. So same kit as in a gift set, and same approach using just what's in the box. But where with this we've done very basic, absolute beginners. We've not painted the canopy, for example, and we've not done anything other than paint the base colours. On this one, what we've done is a little bit of a wash underneath. We've shown you how to paint the canopy using that huge number 2 brush and do a good job of it. And we've also looked at doing some basic additional items like fuel staining. So again, all aimed at the absolute beginner. So by the time of those 3 videos finish, you'll have been able to build both of these, absolute beginner plus next steps. So those videos have been surprisingly popular. When I thought about doing them, the thought was that if someone opens a box Christmas Day and they've got one of these models in there, they can open the model, they can have a video ready to go to show them what to do. I mean, it's quite possible that kids are getting these model kits in the stockings, and if their parents aren't model builders, what do you do? I mean, the instructions are sort of self-explanatory, but certainly youngsters will need a little bit of help here or there. So hopefully that video will help. Certainly the feedback I've got from you guys is that that would be the case. I've been surprised how popular the videos have been, to be honest. When I did them, I expected them to be a slow burn, and videos that have a viewing figure that slowly trickles up as people come across them, and maybe people looking for beginners videos come across them. But actually, in the first hour of airing, it was 20% more popular than my average for a premiere build. So you know what, I just can't predict when something's going to be really popular or not. What I think is going to happen doesn't necessarily follow. So I'm glad they've been popular, and I'm glad that people have been interested in watching them. And if you've got kids or know someone who's got grandkids who might be getting those starter sets for Christmas, do point them in the direction of that video. And yeah, hopefully that'll help them out. So we've settled into our stride with the Queen Mary 2 videos. I've got a format that's working for me, with the mix of what I'm building, showing you how I'm doing it, talking you through it, Stephen adding some additional information and details. I think that's working quite nicely now. It's where I want it to be. As a build, it's always more time consuming than I expect. At every single step, I think, right, well, we'll just whip that together, and then you look at it and actually, I've got to do that, and that to get there, not just that. So, case in point is I'm putting the forecastle onto the promenade deck before we put it into the hull. You should just join the two parts together and plonk it in the hull. But when you join the two parts together, you've got this strange groove all the way around where the parts join. So you've got to fill it and sand it and fill it and sand it. And it becomes a huge job that you weren't expecting. It's hours and hours of work that you weren't planning for. And I'm finding that at every step. And that's because we're trying my best to make it as perfect as possible and add as much detail as possible. So, yeah. Lots of stuff going on in there, and in December, as we progress through, we'll be adding more of that level of detail as we put the deck down and start building up the main superstructure. The basic plan is we'll put the main components together, get the upper deck on, get the funnel on, and then we'll start adding all of those details, starting from the top and moving out and down. So yeah, lots and lots and lots of detail to add, and we've identified quite a lot of things that we need to scratch build to add something to the ship. And then we've got things like deck chairs, people, yeah, lots of things to go. So that will rumble on way into the future, the Queen Mary 2. So, what else is coming in December? Well, I'm not exactly sure what's going to be happening in tools and tips, but I can tell you that we will be doing a quick tips video on dry brushing. So the dry brushing video is coming out of an offer to do that, to help somebody out who's building a model ship. I wanted to understand how they could paint the moulded on anchor chain, and I'd suggested potentially dry brushing it, which wasn't a technique they were familiar with, aware of, but not familiar how to do it. So I've done a short video giving you the very, very basics of how to do some dry brushing. So that's coming up in December. We'll also be looking at a tool for rolling and forming curves and bends on your photo etch. Not quite sure yet what else will be coming along. And in terms of first impressions, you'll be seeing the German armoured car that we talked about in the last roundup, along with the Mark Graf ICM 1350 kit. which is an interesting first impressions. It's all filmed and ready to go. And we'll also be doing the first impressions on the Turpix. Now, the Turpix is a monster of a kit. And when I'd finished doing the first impressions in my normal way, where we went through the instructions, then the plastic parts, then the aftermarket, I've got 3 hours of video there. So we're going to do a fair amount of editing, and that's going to end up being a 2-part first impressions. Probably the plastic kit and then the aftermarket being the Pontos etch and depth that's actually in the kit, because it's a platinum edition. Now, in terms of builds during December, obviously the Queen Mary 2 carries on, and we're hoping to get the promenade decks in, which involves some interior work and a fair amount of modification and a little bit of scratch building, and we've got to dye wood decks, and we've got to add interior railings that are viewable through a window, and all sorts of stuff coming along. So yeah, some quite interesting things coming along in the Queen Mary 2, so don't miss that. We're also going to be completing the Christmas build, which will then be followed by the Airfix 148 Tropical Hurricane build. Now, I actually think that the first build of that will be on Saturday, 1st of January. So a nice start to the new year. Now, HMS Fly. We are already doing some work on Fly and getting her back on the desk after being parked for a little while to concentrate on whittling down those builds. So in November, as we said we were going to do, we've sort of moved ourselves onto this 2-build process, and what I want to do is now move that around a little bit so that once a month we get some Fly. Now, I'm not fully sure yet whether we're going to do that on a Saturday night as a premiere or whether we're going to do Fly as an extra, because we're getting to the point where we're going to do lots and lots of planking, and it's quite repetitive. Once I've shown you how to do it, there isn't a lot to do. There's certain points where there's something different to do, like running the first plank along the keel and doing some steelers and that type of thing. But in the main, you're just laying planks down. So what I'm thinking of doing with the Fly is, rather than doing a big 45-minute, 50-minute, hour-long video like I usually do, is maybe do Fly in shorter segments. So it may be a 15-20 minute video with an update of where we're up to, and talking you through what we're doing. I think that is going to make more sense, in which case they are probably going to be either an additional video or pop in the Monday slot and we'll do tools or a Fly update, something like that. Not 100% sure. So, as always, in December we'll be filming first impressions videos ready for January. I thought it'd be interesting just to talk through how that works. So what happens is we film the first impressions video. It's actually a number of videos that we stitch together. So although we sit down and do it in one session, it's lots of videos. So it'll be introduction, walk around the box, 2 separate videos, instructions, decals, photo etch, each individual sprue, and then the thoughts at the end. They're all individual videos that are, so the recording is paused in between each one. That allows me time to bag things up and put things away and move things around and get things back into shot. So what you end up seeing as a video, is a fair bit shorter than the actual process of making the video. But once that video is made, it goes into a folder and it sits there and it waits for me to have a time slot to dump it into the software that we use for editing it and edit it all together. And I have in my mind a sort of length of time that I want to do for various different videos. So a build video, we aim at no more than an hour. Sometimes they're 45 minutes, sometimes they're an hour. With the tools videos, we aim at them being under 15 minutes. And with the first impressions videos, we try and keep them to somewhere around 35 minutes, 45 minutes. But not always possible. If it's a big ship, for example, like the Turpix, which will end up being 2 one-hour videos most likely. And on average, editing video takes twice as long as recording the video. So if we take Turpix, where I've got 3 hours of recorded footage, it's going to take me roughly 6 hours to edit it. That's because each one of those little elements of video gets loaded in. I've got to adjust the sound, I've got to adjust the background noise and cancel out any hum and that sort of thing. Then I have to watch it, I have to snip it and cut bits out. So if the doorbell goes or an alarm goes off or someone starts using a power drill outside, I then have to cut that bit out and stitch it together. Sometimes I'll have a coughing fit, something like that. So we then cut that all together, and then when we've done that one block, we put a transition in and do the next bit. So we have to do that systematically. So that takes quite a bit of time. And then sometimes we'll then go back and go, right, this bit what we'll do, because we're over length, we'll compress it down by speeding it up, and then we'll cancel the sound off it, put some music on it, and eventually we end up with a video. So when it comes to the first impressions videos, these will be starting to be filmed during December, and then they'll get put together at the back end of December, and then you'll start seeing them as we enter into second week of January. So there's a little bit of an overlap, and that's basically how it works. But it takes a lot more time than perhaps you think. So this is what we're going to be putting to video in December, and December's looking like a bit of a retro kit month. And I'm not sure I had that in my mind when I was deciding what to pull together. I try and give it a mix, so we've got something that flies, something that floats, something that trundles along the ground. So let's have a look. So we're going to have a look at this Thunder Models Hetzer, the Berg Panther version. Now this is the early version. The later version has like a blade on the back. This is my first Thunder Models kit. I have 2 on my wish list. This was one of them, and the other one is the Skemmel tank transporter, but I've been struggling to find one at a not stupid price. Anyway, this is a nice looking kit, and what drew me to it is it has a full interior. So we're going to have driver's position, engine, so it should be a really, really nice build. Thunder Models, I have seen reviews of them online, and they're usually some slide moulding, fair amount of photo etch, and some well moulded plastic parts. So I'm looking forward to looking inside this and seeing what we've got. But yeah, a nice little kit. I quite like the Hetzer. I've always quite liked the Hetzer. So they featured quite heavily in my dissertation. So they're quite close to my heart, Hetzers. So nice to do the Berg Panther version and do something without a gun on it, I think. So that will be being filmed ready for the new year. Then we're going to take a trip back to the 1950s, not just in subject matter, but that's back to the 50s for the actual kit as well. So this is a 1990s box with a 1950s kit in it. So we'll be having a look at the Fairy Rotodyne, an absolutely ingenious idea that never got past the prototype, unfortunately. for all sorts of reasons. But a company that's close to my heart because I used to work for them, and a beautiful aircraft with some quite crazy innovations, which will take you all through that when we do the video. But yeah, that should be an interesting review, I think. Now, in terms of ships, we're going to do two ships that I've been meaning to review for a little while. I'm going to start with this, the Prince of Wales. So, Prince of Wales is one of my bucket list ships, and that's because my family has a bit of an involvement in it. My grandfather was on the HMS Anthony, as some of you will know from previous videos we've done, and was in support of the Horde and the Prince of Wales in the Battle of the Denmark Strait. And he remembers escorting the Prince of Wales back to Iceland after that action, and not only did she have a list, but she was very, very low in the water. People don't realise how close to losing the Prince of Wales we were. And the reason she was low in the water is she'd been rushed out and her water pumping system was not operational. So she wasn't able to ship out any of the water that she was taking in. And it wasn't until she got back to Camel Leads, where she'd been built, that the local fire brigade could pump her out and they could get her into dry dock. And interestingly, when they got her into dry dock, they found a shell from the Bismarck just above the bilge keel, which had penetrated the ship but not exploded. So it was removed and detonated. But all that time, going back to Iceland, then going from Iceland back to Camel Leads, had this live Bismarck shell on her. So she could have gone at any time. It's quite an interesting story. So yeah, we will be having a look at this. Now, interestingly, for me at least, this is one of only two what I consider classic Tamiya kits that I have never built. All the others I have. So this and the USS Enterprise are the only two sort of late 70s, early 80s kits that I've not touched. I've built the King George V, but I've never built the King Edward. Sorry, Prince of Wales. She got renamed when someone abdicated. Anyhow, one of the things we'll be looking at is, are these good value for money? Because they're less than half the price of a newer Tamiya ship kit of the same scale. And the Prince of Wales is not a small ship as battleships go, so you've got quite a sizable kit in here. So, like I say, I've never built it. I've built the King George V, so I know roughly what's going to happen. I also know what the standard of Tamiya kits in the 80s was. So, it will be an interesting review. We do have aftermarket, various aftermarket bits and pieces in there to look at as well. So, it'll be quite a hefty first impressions video. I'm really looking forward to building this at some point because it's been on my to-do list for a little while. So every kit I look at, I could say, oh, we'll do that next year. The trouble is there isn't enough year to do it. And then finally, we're also going to have a look at this. Now, I have a number of Scharnhorst kits, so guess which one of the options we're going to take when we come to build this one. So it's a 1400, it's actually a Hella kit, and it goes back to the time when Humboldt, Airfix, Hella were all one entity, and a number of Hella kits got knocked out under the Airfix badge, which is why it's 1400 scale and not Airfix's traditional 1600 scale. It's a bit of an odd scale, but it was a standard scale for Hella. Anyway, we have a couple of options in there. We have some aftermarket in there as well. Box is a bit battered now. It's getting on a little bit. But this should be a nice little kit. We've already looked at a 1400 Hella Airfix kit in the past. So it'll be interesting to have a look at this and see how it stands up to the 1350 Big Brothers that we've looked at. So, that's all being filmed in the next few weeks, ready for January, so you've already got a feel for what January's looking like. So that's what's coming up on model kit stuff during December, and taking us up to the end of the year. Would you believe it? Another year gone. And my stash hasn't got any smaller. Well, I'm not sure what's going on. Despite my best efforts, no matter how many I build, stash seems to keep getting bigger. It's a very strange thing. And that situation isn't going to be eased by Christmas now, is it? So, in the next roundup, we'll be having a look at what's coming up in January, what we're filming for February. And we'll also be having a look at what new additions to the stash that we might have got from Father Christmas. I'm sure there's at least one or two. In fact, I might know that there is. And then we'll be having a look at the new Airfix catalogue and things like that. So there's lots of stuff coming up, lots of builds planned for next year. We'll have to see how they pan out. So that's it for now. Thanks for looking in. Take care, everyone. Enjoy your modelling, and we will see you very soon.